Welcome into the Toyota Lounge for the DNVR Avalanche Podcast, powered by your Front Range Toyota dealerships. We got all 4 DNVR Avs members here talking draft stuff. And really, we'll spend the next couple of weeks, of course, digging into draft prospects and all that, and probably on some of today's show too. But wanted to start in with the draft coverage with Eric kind of giving us a rundown on what it's really like on the other side, what it really looks like to form a draft list as an NHL team and how all of that gets organized behind the scenes. Eric, you've told us before, it really is for Avs fans, for example, most fans don't think about the draft until they're eliminated from the playoffs. For the team itself, you're talking at minimum 12 months before, right?
Oh, yeah. And what we'll talk about here in the next few minutes, it's more like start with a little bit of some stuff that a lot of people might know, but a lot of people might not know. So we'll kind of get everybody back on the same page there after, the first period, and then kind of get going on the second period with ideas that are kind of what happens usually in a war room. Because who said that the tweet fight? Was that you or AJ? Or, which
I also did.
You want fighting. You do, and then we'll get to that in a second. You don't want everybody to say, "Oh, okay, I agree." That's when you're going to make mistakes. But you're right. The draft, it is your lifeline. It is your blood to your organization. It is the reason for success. Look at the Avs. Looking back at, and sometimes you do have to suffer. That means that you have high picks. That means you had bad seasons, and we talked about that a couple days ago. But, but you need to nail it on picks, and you need it to, on a pick like Mikko at 10, you need to nail it. You need to nail it on the late round picks. You need to get lucky to get Kale at 4.
Well, and all of that starts with preparation.
Exactly, and we always say that, even when you're playing the game, right? There's luck involved, but freaking A, if you're prepared and you create your own luck, right? So when it comes down to teams, what we'll talk about here is kind of an average of the way people do things. Of course, everybody does things a little bit differently, and everybody has a different organizational chart. But at the end of the day, the essence and it's all here, and that we'll talk about right now. You know what I mean? Of how things actually work. We were just talking about 2 seconds ago before that. We've seen examples of an owner coming down and all of a sudden saying, "This is who we're picking." And then you're like, holy shnikes. You know what I mean? You talk about pissing your staff off. You know what I mean? So what we're saying is on a normal day around the National Hockey League, not on a crazy day like the example I just said, but on a normal day how things usually work within teams. First of all, everybody's got a system called RinkNet. Most teams use that. There's a few teams that don't use RinkNet. You guys would go nuts if you were able to go see that. All of you guys, It is so awesome. It's so cool because it's all the game reports of guys since they were it doesn't matter. Some guys are 14, 15 because they've been playing in those leagues where guys could have been seen and have a report written on them. So when you just said, Rudo just said it, 12 months, it's more even 24, 36 months of preparation, right? Because even though the league will have the Stanley Cup awarded here coming up, there's also those summer tournaments, right? That are, in Europe and the Linka and all those things, and then the U18 that we just saw a few weeks ago. It doesn't stop at the amateur guys. It really doesn't. It's crazy. It's a 12-month-a-year job. And for me, it's the most rewarding job probably in the NHL. For me is the amateur guys. But it's probably the least glorifying one, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So I think these guys, they go through the freaking backside of Siberia to the snowstorms in Ontario, and they never miss a game. It's never the snowstorm, I couldn't make it. So those guys work hard, and it's not like the NHL when you get into the pro side of things and you're scouting, and then you have a nice buffet and the freaking press box in Chicago, and you have lamb chops and those guys go in the ranks and it's a dry, cold slice of pizza, and then you grab it, and that's why I got so much respect for those guys. And
when you say it's less glamorous, you mean like they're involved in scouting kids, and then that's their job.
That's right.
They're done after that. After a kid gets drafted, they're kind of done, and then it's just on to the next crop of
kids,
of prospects to scout for the next season.
It's on to the next kids, and they know those kids coming up because of all those tournaments and everything, and sometimes up to 2-3 years before their draft eligibility year. So those guys are that's the word I can't do, but encyclopedia, whatever. You know what I mean? Like they're like their knowledge of all the kids.
Encyclopedia.
Yeah, exactly. I just can't say the word, but those guys are freaking. They know everyone. They know all the kids. They know everyone. They know exactly strengths, weaknesses years before even their draft. And of course, there's always. I'm talking about the top end guys. You're not going to know about the 7th rounder a few years before, because usually those guys are late bloomers, and that's why they slip to the 7th. But very important aspect of name me a good team, I'll name you a good amateur scouting staff. I mean, it does work hand in hand. It really does.
You have to get some of them right.
Yep.
You do. You can't
do.
You can't just hit over every. You know what I mean? Like you can't. Then you got the wrong people. You got the wrong approach. It's not bad luck. Like at some point there is some bad luck, but if it's every year, like
if you never get it right,
yeah.
Come on.
And here's the way those guys are so good. Before we get into it, like the way they're so good, because this is where I lack. You know what I mean? Is their experience. They always go back and they'll use, let's say, think of Cale Makar. So you use Cale Makar, it's just easy. Oh, but I remember Cale at 14 when he was playing Bantam AA, and you know what I mean. And then you're like, and then they compare those guys years later to those kids that are that age. It's crazy. I don't know how you do. My brain doesn't allow me to do that. That's why I would be a shitty amateur scout. I'm just being honest. My brain doesn't allow me. This is what Cale Makar is today, and this is what he's going to be, and this is where is he on the downhill or is he on the uphill? You know what I mean? But when you go back to when they were like 14, 15, or their first year in the OHL, and that's how they compare, because they're like, we took a swing on, I don't know, freaking Rudo, and it worked. Then they go back to that. They're like, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's exactly how Rudo was, and look, he worked out years later. You know what I mean? So you got to be able to go back. You got to be able to have your brain to do that. And
Pattern recognition, yeah.
It's not. And like you said, AJ, those guys get drafted. Their job's done.
Yeah.
This is why I don't like when teams don't bring their whole staff to training camps. Things have changed a little bit since COVID. Now some teams are not bringing their amateur scouts and, to the draft. For me, I think it's such a rewarding thing for a scout that, let's say he went to bat and he picked up AJ or Meghan in the 4th round, and then all of a sudden you're at training camp, you see the guy you push for or the girl you push for, and they're there. It's so exciting, and you're seeing it live and in person, and then you're gone, and then off you are to your cold slices of pizza for the rest of the year, right? You know what I mean? But for a few days, you're actually there, and you're treated like an NHLer and part of the team, part of the group. So I do feel that when teams don't bring their staff, I do feel that it sucks. I don't even know what the Avs are nowadays, but I do believe it's an important part, and I think it's the only time that you can be all together. You know what I mean? Like the draft used to be, this is going to be the last time, where all the pro guys are there, amateur guys are together, and, there's always fights between those two anyway. And then, here with the ASBAG, then we used to do a nice freaking alumni game, meaning like old-timers game, not alumni game, but the whole staff game playing at night, and we'd make 2 teams. It was so fun, and it was so fun, and everybody wanted to kill Jean Martineau. So we, guys, make sure I'm not with Johnny. Sorry, Johnny, if you're listening. You know what I mean? Like talk would be like, put me against Johnny. You know what I mean? I'm gonna get him, and it was so funny. And so I think there's a big aspect there to, and for the amateur guys to be with the head coach, and you know what I mean? I think it's important. I do believe it's important, because they're never around. But we'll jump into it now in the sense that the way it works, and we hear that, we read that, and we're all guilty of it too. A lot of times we'll say, oh yeah, like Kenny Holland, he doesn't know how to draft, GM of the Edmonton. Well, the GM really rarely has anything to do with the draft, honestly. It's just that your job is to make sure that you have the right people in charge, which we'll get down to the org chart here in a second. But at the end of the day, your job is, you're not really going to see all those names that we'll be talking about. You might have seen them. You might have seen them once in passing. Some guys don't even see. I can tell you right now, my old man never went, because he believed in his scouting staff and he let them be. You better get it right. You better get it right. But very rare. I think the year they had 4 first-round picks, I think Goo was telling the story. Remember, like Tanguay and Regier and all those guys. So they did go out there on a few scouting trips in Europe to see, the guys that were going to be in the top 15, 20 picks, So, but rarely do you think that the general manager is really in charge of selecting who you're going to pick. He might sit on the meetings. Some don't even sit on the meetings, but you got to make sure that it's going right. And your job is to make sure you lead the organization. So really, you're not there to make the pick. You make sure that,
So you're talking about building like a draft list and like who's in charge of that, but who kind of sets the organization values when you're scouting prospects? Who decides, hey, we want guys who are, we really want to hone in on guys who are good skaters. We want guys who are bigger.
Yeah.
We want, like who is the guy that really says, okay, here are the things that we're really after the most?
Yeah, great question, because what I was going to say to you, it's exactly that. Now, the GM, which is the leader, will set the tone on that with his head amateur scout or whatever. Make sure that we're on the same page here. Go back to, for example, really easy examples. Detroit Red Wings all those years, If you go back to the Red Wings, you're talking about like the setup for their late picks in Zetterberg and Datsuk and those guys, right? They were drafting hockey players, meaning like high IQ guys. It didn't matter. It didn't matter what they were. As long as they knew how to play hockey, that was their big thing. Meaning like the IQ, right? Was the number one thing on the scout game report. So if you look back over the years, like a lot of guys that didn't sign ended up playing in the NHL, but because everybody was like, well, Detroit drafted him, that means high hockey IQ. You know what I mean? And it's funny because it sticks with you. Some teams over the years may have gone purely size, right? Oh, if you're not 6'3", we're not drafting you, and you can tell.
Like Arizona last year when they drafted monsters for 7 straight rounds.
So then you can tell that there was something coming down from the top, right? You know what I mean? This is what we're doing. Us in those years with, same thing with Price and Hep. It was more like, let's make sure we're getting hockey players. You know what I mean? Because we're trying to take the IQ, the model from Detroit a little bit, and Detroit always went, they're still going for those Swedes all the time, and Swedes usually have the highest hockey IQ of all players, usually at those ages, but not being like pigeonholing guy, but it's true. Swedes are freaking smart players, right? And so it does come down from the GM. It does come down to make sure that there is something that you're looking for in your organization. Yes, we'll talk about needs later too, and then what is our needs? Where are we thin on?
So that's where it starts. It starts with the GM saying, okay, here are the attributes that we're really honing in on this year in particular.
Yeah,
go forth, my scouting staff, and find me. A draft class.
And
that's where it starts.
And we talk about all the time is Bednar and CMAC making sure that it's on the same page.
Yeah.
You got to make sure that you're on the same page with your head amateur guy, or or else this is when it can become sideways a little bit. Then you don't have a healthy relationship, and there's arguments that are not known to the other guys. They're more private arguments, and it's this is where it gets ugly, and usually those marriages don't last. That's where you see a turnover. But then again, quickly here before we go to the first ad reads, it's more like the GM is there, sets the tone. Then you have your head amateur guy. Then you usually have an assistant, that's going to be with them. Clip is the main guy here, right? And then you have regional guys. Every team is different to the number of people they'll have, but they'll cover the globe, right? From a few in Europe, and then there's always a Western guy, an OHL guy, there's a Quebec League guy, then there's an NCAA guy, then there's out west guy for the Dub. And then there's a USHL guy. So everybody's got their own little compartments of what they're in charge of, and you better know. And you'll see they turn green sometimes because they're like, oh, my God, I didn't have this guy on my list. And then the guy goes in the third round, and you're like, oh, I didn't even have him on my list overall. And then guy ends up being a freaking 12-year NHLer. You're like, oh, boy, I missed the boat on that one. You know what I mean? So it's very, you got to know your territories. You got to have good ones. There's some part-time guys, and then there's some full-time guys. And then out of these guys, there's also some crossover guys. And what I mean by that is the associate guy maybe will be the guy, like a guy that's been around for a long time. And the Dub, they will see guys in different areas, which you need because you need different.
Got to be able to compare them.
You got to be able to compare, right?
Especially if you're talking about top picks.
Of course. And that's especially now you need to, again, at the start, you might not cross over much. But then after Christmas, you're like, okay, you're really narrowing down on your list that we'll get to in a few minutes. But, it's very important to have good communication with the GM, to the head amateur guy. Head amateur guy, good communication with his guys. And they're a team. They're a team. They're just like a 12-man team instead of being a 23-man roster. They're a 12-man team, and they talk, and they talk every day, and they have their stuff. And there's some guys in there that have small parts of the puzzle, like of the pie, right? Because they're part-time guys. And then there's guys that have bigger pieces of the pizza because they are crossover guys. And then obviously you have your regional guys that don't move, but they're full-time. So it is a different animal. It is a different world. Is like we said, it's a world with respect. And then after these ad reads, we'll get on to the really how does it work, the planning of that year.
Well, look, when you're looking at prospects, the future is bright, right? So don't miss that third-round guy. Make sure you can see what you're looking at with your Shady Rays on. Go get yourself some Shady Rays over at ShadyRays.com today. 5 stars by over 300,000 people. They have premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. That's the best part about it. You're not going out and paying ridiculous prices for a pair of sunglasses when it comes to Shady Rays. You can actually afford these pairs. They have hundreds of different options to choose from, so you're bound to find a pair that you like and one that matches your style. Go check it out. They probably even have some team colors when it comes to some of them if you want to rep the colors of a specific team with your sunglasses. Of course, we all wear them all the time. Low-key, excellent product if you have a job where you stare into bright lights. Shady Rays are a lifesaver for that, let me tell you. Go check them out if you haven't. The coolest part about Shady Rays is if you get a pair, you don't like them, you break them, or you lose them in the first month, Shady Rays will replace them completely for free. So go give them those 30 days. You might as well try them out. And exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to ShadyRays.com and use code DNVR for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Again, you can try the shades that are rated over 5 stars by over 300,000 people for yourself. Once you get your Shady Rays on, maybe the correct bets will illuminate themselves with the Shady Rays on when you go over to ClutchBet and find the most Colorado unique bets out there of any sports book that is in Colorado. So jump on it. Even if you're not betting on Colorado sports, hockey fans can take advantage of ClutchBet's other great promos, which include insurance on all first goal scorer bets as well as NHL parlays through the Cup final. So if you feel the vibe on some of the bets in Florida versus Edmonton, go put some money down with ClutchBet and you can get some insurance on those. New ClutchBet players are also eligible to receive a 100% first bet match up to $250 paid in bonus bets over the first 5 weeks when you use code DNVR250. So download that ClutchBet Sportsbook app today. Use that DNVR250 code and be sure to keep an eye out for other great promotions on teams like the Rockies, the Broncos, the Nuggets, and the Avs, as well as more Denver sports. Of course, you must be 21 or older, physically located in the state of Colorado. Please gamble responsibly and call 1-800-GAMBLER if you or someone you know needs help. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. Talking draft here. Quickly, Eric, I did want to ask you, we're about to have a 4-man argument about how we form our list.
4-person.
4-person, my bad. You're right. 4 human. Should have gotten it right. how big are some of these staffs? I know every team has a little bit different variations, but it's going to be hard enough for us as 4 to sort out a list. Some of these teams, you're talking about like 20 guys.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, this is when great question leads on to the second part right here, which is now once you got your depth chart of, org chart of this is how we work here, this is how we do it. And then you've seen everything is in RinkNet that was telling you guys about this software that all the, the names are in there with the game reports and everything you might know about their grandma and moms and whoever it is and dads and, whatever it is that's you need to know about the player. Because, again, you've seen those people, you've done a character check on those people, and then we'll get to that with the combine and everything. You can finalize all that towards the end of your yearly plan. But the start of the year, you'll get on RinkNet. Guys will already be highlighted a little bit, like by their, their birth years, right? Their level of prospect, like, orange might be that all of a sudden, like, this is a must-see guy right away. Because guys know the guys coming up within their regions, right? They've seen them since they were 14, 15. So
the most obvious example would be exceptional status guys. And
those are the easiest ones, right? You know what I mean? So then you see them, and then all of a sudden, like, you start planning your season because you're going to see a lot of viewings of all those players, right? Especially if you're a regional guy. You're seeing a lot of the same guys all the time. And then once you're going to see AJ because he's highlighted, then all of a sudden you're seeing Meghan because, he popped at you. And then all of a sudden Meghan becomes highlighted by Christmas or, you know what I mean? Because there's levels of whole must see because now you got to get yourself ready to tell your crossover guys, you really got to come see AJ. You really got to come see Meghan. Don't waste your time on Rudo, you know what I mean? Because he's not highlighted.
I wouldn't waste my time on me.
You know what I'm saying? Or don't go see Eric and Tiff because, they're not worth it. They're not going to make our list, right? So all of a sudden you're gonna prepare your own schedule, and you can see everybody's schedule on RinkNet. It's awesome. It's so fun because you can see where everybody is, and then all of a sudden, if you're really a good an amateur guy, you'll make sure that they're seeing enough viewings of those players, and then you might tell AJ, you don't have a lot of viewings on this guy. Oh yeah, that's right, it's me. I'm gonna make sure I get to see him a couple times here coming up. You know what I mean? And then you got to be ready to tell those crossover guys that, hey, those are the guys you have to come see. Those are the guys that will come and fall into our lap, especially if it's the first round or second round. You kind of know where you're at unless you trade the pick with. Again, that's a different story. You trade the pick on the draft floor. You've worked all year. It's so hard for those amateur guys. You're like, you know what I mean? It's just not. I mean, it's just weird. There's things behind the scenes you don't see. You know what I mean? And then you're like, you understand, but it still makes it where you're like, you work so hard all year long to go and do that, but now you don't get to make the pick. You know what I mean? So kind of stings a little bit, but. To get back to our process here, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, we're going to do our list earlier in the year. Let's say you meet in the fall, and then the change, you'll meet again by after Christmas, because it's post World Juniors, and, because the guys will go to World Juniors, and then guys' stocks rises, or just take Zeev down the road here. His stock just rose every time, went from an outsider to, maybe a first rounder to maybe a top 20, now to maybe a top 5. Who knows, right? We'll see where you guys put him, but all of a sudden you have a plan for the year, and you're going to meet, and then your list is going to change again in January, and then you're going to meet again right around now because there's a combine right now, so you get to interview those people. You get to dig in more about their personalities and their characters, and it might change your list a little bit, right? It might change your list a little bit. Because all of a sudden you're like, I really don't like him. Like, and it does happen. It does happen. And then all of a sudden you go to the draft day with your list because the night before you've really solidified it, and then you've had all those arguments that we're about to have here ourselves, and you're good to go. And it's a crucial list. You don't want any team to see your list. You know what I mean? I've never seen. Back then they used to be printed too sometimes. Now everything's computerized, but you don't want to make, that's the least you want to do is make sure it's like in the NFL, your playbook, like you don't want to lose that, right?
So I just have a couple of quick clarifying questions here. How big are the lists? Because every year every year you see guys start to slip, and you're like, why aren't they taking this guy? Why aren't they taking this guy? Chances are that guy's not on a team's list, right?
I'll keep it very simple, and let's use numbers like the first round. So usually you would think the first 30, 35 picks, probably like maybe not the same order, but
You have them all. On
you
the
have
list,
them all on the
unless
list.
you take
know?
Philip Johansson, 24th Minnesota.
Yeah,
Looking at you.
know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you might have 50, 55 people on your list. Again, some people might have 70, some people, I mean, at the end of the day, your list will start looking really different by 35, compared to all, meaning like they have AJ on their list and 29 other teams don't. You know what I mean? And it's just, there's so many players. It's a worldwide sport. There's so many people that can, and this is where you're fighting in those 4 times you meet, whatever, 3 times you meet for your list, for your guys. I'm really pounding my, my hand on the table because I want Rudo to be part of the list. And, you know what I mean? And then, because once you get there, just on a sidebar, all of a sudden, like, the first 30 names are gone. You erase. And then what you see is, names that are gone. And then all of a sudden, by the second round, third round, like, you'll see teams next to you, like, if they have a printed sheet and not on the computer, because you don't want people to look at your list, you might have it on the printed sheet. You can see they might go like 3-4 pages down, and then they can tell it's the funniest. Or they don't even find your guy. You know what I mean? They're like, I remember Blake Wheeler. Was he 4th overall? What? Something like that. It was crazy.
Maybe
and
4.
everyone, when they made the pick, everyone's like trying to scratch off their thing, and they're like, and then some guys are turning pages and didn't even have him, or they had him. Again, ended up being a great pick. The guy, played in the NHL 15 years. What I'm saying is, but there's always that pick, and then you see guys, and they don't want to make faces in case they're on camera, but you can tell they're like, holy shit, we had him way lower. You know what I mean? Like, and then when you hear a GM at 24th, for example, Chris McFarland this year, I can guarantee you what he's going to say. Well, like, we had this guy in the top 10, or even in the second round, you're going to hear GM say, we feel he was a first rounder. No, he's not. They're not lying. On their list, he was a first rounder. So for them, he was ranked 24th, and they got him at 38. So in their minds, it's not a cliche. It's literally a fact. Like, they had him at 24. So
how many guys are on a list?
No, that's what I said.
On average.
On average.
Like,
let's say you're at, like, maybe 55, 60,
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, like, and I'm telling you, there'll be names left on your list every year. And then I was telling you guys, when you hear guys calling you, like, hey, can you add, this guy to the list? He played good in the, in the WHL this year. And you're like, this is not how it works. Our guys worked all year long. And, it doesn't work that way. Or else it would be like everyone's friends and kids would be drafted. It's not how you do things. You know what I mean? I used the Islanders one year that the owner made the pick, but then again, that staff probably all left, and I'm never working with this team ever again, because it's not how you do things.
They had a bad list.
Well, they had a bad list. No, well, they had a good list, but
I mean,
this is an evolution of it, though, right? Because 40 years ago in the 80s or whatever, you get into the 9th round, and some guy's like, hey, pick me, or their agent will come up and like talk to him, right? In the modern era, there's just too much scouting going on to really have that anymore.
And these have changed everything, and the video have changed everything because you have access to so many guys now. Just like we've been watching these past few weeks, right, on shifts or whatever. I mean, it's incredible what you can do nowadays. And now, do I believe in video scouting? No, I do to a certain extent. You know what I mean? Do I believe in the eye test? Yeah, I do to a certain extent. Do I believe in analytics? Yeah, I do to a certain extent. So I think if you combine all three, you're bound to make the right pick. And then you add character to this, right? Which is where the combine and doing those regional guys make so much digging down deep into the players, because they got to make sure that who they're putting on the list is something that they're worthy of being a Colorado Avalanche. Sure.
So we'll start to get into the specifics of everybody always has this question of, all right, you're whatever team you are. When does positional need come into it?
Yeah. Well, here's what I'll say, especially early. If you want to make a mistake, then you draft on position. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, things change so quickly. You know, you make a trade and then you get 2 new Ds, and then even though you were short on Ds, and those guys are usually years away from being on your roster. So then all of a sudden, like, you draft the best player possible, then you'll make it work after, because you might use that asset and trade it for that whatever position that you need. At the end of the day, maybe later on in those rounds, then you can go by position if you're making a swing at something, you know, taking a swing at something. Oh, let's take a swing. We're low on centers. Let's take swings at centermen. But they're already on your list.
Okay,
but you might not go in order at the end. But I'm telling you, up till then, you always take best player available, and then you look on your list and you're like, oh, God, we have number 14 on our list. We're at 42 right now, and our 14 guy on our list is a D, but we don't want a D. You're going to take that guy.
So when Arizona, in 2018, when Arizona needed a center and they took Baird Hayton, and they watched Quinn Hughes, Evan Bouchard, and Noah Dobson go in the 7 picks after, that was a bad call?
But here's what I didn't work for them, but I'll go back to what I just said. If you're picking on position, you're bound to make the mistake.
Got it.
So I do believe that's a great example by you. For me, it's probably a mistake there. Looking back at it, right? No offense to the player,
it was a mistake when it happened.
That's
why it sticks out in my mind.
No, but for sure. And if you go back in their meetings, I'm sure they probably drafted on position. And I think if you're drafting on position and those freaking high numbers, you're bound to make a mistake.
Well, and they did. I'm not trying to pick on Arizona.
No.
Dmitry Simashev, where they took him last year, might have been a little rich because they really needed a defenseman in that pipeline. So that's what they did.
Yep. And that's a great example of what I was saying, because things change so quick in the NHL that you can't, all of a sudden you have too many centers, and then you're like, oh shit, we even drafted a center, we should have drafted a D. You know, best player available, and again, that's most cases. We're talking. Remember at the start of the show, we said most cases. We didn't say every time. We said most cases.
Yeah.
And this is most cases. All teams work, give and take. Again, we're just generalizing everything, but some guys might have freaking 80 guys on their list. I don't freaking know. You know what I mean? But you know, at the end of the day, you're not going to pick 80. You're gonna go down to maybe around your 55th one for your 7th round pick, and that's usually what it is.
I mean, you got to take the mindset same way going into Circle K, right? You got to get the best snack available when it comes to Circle K. So
I appreciated this segue.
Go make sure you're part of Circle K's Inner Circle Rewards, so you're getting great deals every time you stop in, including 25 cents off a gallon when you fill up for the first 5 times after becoming part of the Inner Circle. And you can also get 69-cent Polar Pops of any size when it comes to Circle K's Inner Circle. So go get in there. Go get the great deals. You buy 5 of anything, you get the 6th one free. So that is, I don't know. I'm a big fan of beef jerky myself. That might be the top of my snack pick list. So make your choices when it comes to Circle K, when whatever snacks it is you're feeling. Again, go stop in, go get part of that Inner Circle Rewards program with that QR code on screen, or go to circlek.com/inner circle and get those great deals every single day at Circle K. Once you've got your Circle K snacks, make sure you're dropping off that change over at your bank. Well, really not a bank, a credit union. Get with Westera Credit Union today. They've been in Colorado for 90 years now. So they've been around the block a couple of times when it comes to Colorado. 9 different locations in the Denver metro area. They just launched a new product called their Smart Money Checking, which is a checking account where you can earn up to 6% annual percentage yield on your first $2,000 and more. As your balance grows, you unlock potential for additional great rates for higher balances. On top of that, you can also earn rewards through their rewards debit card. So not just making the money on your money, but also get some rewards for the money that you spend. A ton of different options when it comes to Westera. They're here to help take care of you and be part of the community. If you like earning money by doing the things you're already doing with your checking account, visit westeracu.com/smartmoney for more details. Membership eligibility required, insured by NCUA. Restrictions and conditions apply. Any other major questions we want to ask or answer?
I do have a question. In looking at so much turnover with coaching in the NHL this last season, I was curious how that factored into the draft, even beyond coaching, but front office staff changing hands too. When it comes to trying to figure out what type of player is going to be a good fit in the organization, Are you looking to something like what kind of a player would thrive under this specific coach? Or because there has been so much turnover, are you looking more at the core of the players and who to build around in there?
That's a great question. And honestly, like, that's why I like continuity with staff, because all the way to the coaching staff in the NHL. Yeah, I mean, you can tell. I'm going to stereotype Daryl Sutter, for example. Like, you can tell that you're drafting guys, and you're like, oh boy, Daryl Sutter, he's not going to. No, that's not his style, right? I mean, that's a good question. I think you have to, and then stick to what you're trying to do in that moment between, like I said, the GM and the head amateur guy, and what you're trying to be as an organization. Usually, it's in line with what the coach that's in place wants. Things might change. Things might change as there's changes behind the bench, and it sounds like it's every week right now in the NHL behind the bench. This is crazy, but that's a different show. But great question. I think you have to go in the moment what you are, but then all of a sudden there might be some drastic changes on if you have really a different style of coach that all of a sudden And again, it matters. You're going to say, oh, you never know. You won't know if they'll play for you. No, but you want them to play for you. That's why you're drafting them. You're not saying we'll use them as chess people or whatever, as objects to trade on the trade deadline or whatever it is. At the end of the day, you're picking them because you want them to play for you, right? So, but anyway, to get back to the list here, the list is very simple. It starts at the start, and then it will change 3-4 times during the year as when you meet, you get all together. So we can have some fun right here with the list, and let's pretend that this is our list right here, and let's pretend that this is where the arguments are, right? Usually with all guys in there, including the GM a lot of times, or some GMs opt not to even be part of it because they're like,
I'm just going to screw it up.
I haven't seen those guys. It's up to you guys.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, which I respect. My old man, here you go. I mean, praise those guys like what to be
If
here
you're
right
going to
now,
make the decision anyway, why'd you even bother hiring those guys?
No, you make sure that you take care of them, that you're there, making sure you have a conversation with them about their contract, their family on the side, or bring them to dinner that night, and everybody. But to really go and say, no, I like this guy, that guy better. If you haven't really seen them, you really don't belong in there. And that's my opinion. I think, and then like Rudo said earlier, if all of a sudden you miss every time, then you're fired. I mean, that's just life, right? That's any job. Like if you're not delivering, then you're not gonna, you're not gonna have your job again. So you'll go with the list, and let's just go, and then for argument's sake, there's 4 of us. So who do you got at number 1, AJ? I think it's gonna be unanimous. This is a simple one, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this year it's easy.
Pretty clear cut.
It should be Macklin Celebrini. Like I really.
There's no
there are some other
argument.
years where you can have some interesting conversations. So this is just, for me, this isn't one of them.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna keep going and help me out, Tiff, on.
Double tap, apparently.
No, I know, but I wasn't sure.
Oh, now you're typing.
Oh, this is
gonna be ugly.
This is exactly
This
how
is
I first saw this
Hey,
going. Yeah.
This is exactly what we talked about yesterday, and he got so defensive about it.
Hold on.
While we wait for this,
Hold on. Kids, be cool.
Kids,
Stay
be
in school.
cool.
Don't be like me. I'm doing those things. All right, go.
Celebrini, number 1. No doubt about that one.
Okay,
Megan,
so-
any dissenting opinion?
No, we're cool with Celebrini.
Okay.
The draft could start at 2.
All right.
No way you have. Okay, Mac, that's fine.
I
We're
wrote
good.
down Mac.
That's
yeah.
good.
Is that
I was
good
going to
enough?
say, there's no way you're writing both of his names down. There's not
No,
going to
no, no. I just, and again, this is just for fun for people to see. Like,
The other part of this will be Eric spelling all of the names on the fly.
This could be terrible. So please do not hold it against me.
I'm thrilled that he's the one with the iPad.
Well, I'm gonna get it here. All right, we got a 2.
Do you want me to go
Yeah,
first?
sure,
I have Demidov at 2.
And so do I.
Megan?
I do as well. I kind of also made my list like very specific to Columbus picking.
So the idea...
So like my number 1, I don't even have Macklin Celebrini in my list, but it's
because your number 1 is for picking 4th.
Yeah,
right?
so my number 1's technically Demidov, actually, but
The idea, for background here, is that we were, for preparation purposes, we were going in like we were
The
Columbus'
4th overall pick,
scouting staff, just so that we're not picking second, but like so that we can actually get into a list a little bit. And sink our teeth into it. I don't have Demidov at 2.
But good question though, because not question, but good point, because your list has to be on point, because you could be offered the number 1 pick, even though you're picking at 24. You could be offered like a top 10 pick.
Yep.
On the spot, on the draft table. That's why it's so important to be prepared. Like you're going in there, like you're picking every pick. That's why every pick matters. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying we had said it's my fault, like Columbus. Yeah, I agree. But, all of a sudden, you got to think that you might be able to swing a deal that gets you the first pick. And again, it's this year unrealistic, but you never know.
Yeah. Don't think San Jose is trading that thing.
So who do you got at 2, for example?
I have Cade Lindstrom. My big thing with him is that I think he's a better prospect than Quentin Byfield was. He's big. He skates. He scores a lot of goals. He does everything that you want out of a franchise center, and to put him with Adam Fantilli would be down the middle, those couple of guys. It takes the pressure off of Sillinger and Johnson to be centers for that organization moving forward. And I just think Lindstrom's the better prospect. He does everything. Now,
okay, we're going somewhere with this. It's perfect.
The one concern at the combine right now, we have to make sure that his back that ended his season, that he had a back injury that ended his year. If his back does not clear, this changes it for me. If he's fine, he's my number 2 guy.
Okay, we'll pretend that he's fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, Meghan, who'd you have at 2, you said? But you kind of had it as more as Demidov as your guy.
He was, I guess, my
number 1 realistic
my number
target.
1, yeah.
Since everyone knows Mac is gone.
That's fine. Okay, so that
do
makes...
you have
He's got...
Your 2 is different from Demidov?
Yeah. Yes.
He's got Lindstrom.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Lindstrom.
Interesting. Correct? He's my 3, so I don't hate it.
Yeah,
so...
I think he's my 4, so...
Okay, perfect. He's my 4th. So for the purposes of this, like 4 meetings, you're talking about in 12 months or whatever it is, your list will change. So let's just say we had, as a consensus at the start, Demidov is number 2. Okay. Now we're fast forwarding to June meetings. I still have Demidov as 2. He's got Demidov as 2. AJ, you are the head amateur guy, right? On the org chart that we talked about, you really like Lindstrom. You believe Lindstrom should be the guy. And this is where it becomes a fight, a talk about, like, hold on a second. And then here's why we're doing this. And so let's say you're saying, you just said it, Fantilli, whatever it is. And let's say we agree now. So Demidov used to be at 2 right here. Now we're scratching Demidov and we're putting Lindstrom. For argument's sake, let's just do it this way so people understand. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, can we get into it a little?
Oh, no,
can we go through that process?
Yes.
So for me, why I don't have Demidov there, I think the playmaking is great, but I worry. I think skill-wise, they're pretty close. And Lindstrom is the more valuable player, both with his size and his position. The injury is obviously going to make me nervous, but and for that organization, being able to stack franchise centers makes it more valuable to me. Even if I'm not Columbus, if I'm just a random team building a list, I still think Lindstrom is the more valuable prospect. And to be honest with you, this begins the immediate conversation about the Russian factor.
That's the big thing.
Which this exists this year, maybe more so than a lot of other years because there are so many Russian players involved. Mm-hmm. Right now, drafting a player out of Russia feels a little bit like chaos. You don't really know what's going on with his situation.
Agreed.
You have absolutely no control over his development. You're taking a top pick and you're just hoping for the best. For me, there's safety in Caden Lindstrom while also getting a blue chip prospect, and that's why he ended up higher on my list than Demidov. I think they're going to be very comparable at quality of NHL players. So all those things considered, I've got Lindstrom there.
My thing is, when it comes to Demidov, I think this part of the game is a little bit more adept, especially when it comes to professional level hockey. Nothing against Lindstrom. Again, I have him 4th on my list. I'm not saying that he struggles or anything, but I always do wonder with some of those bigger guys and a guy that is willing to put his head down and go to the dirty areas. Is he just bigger than a bunch of kids?
Yeah, in a league where he's playing against 16
Right.
and 17-year-old kids, like, and being his size, yeah.
And the comparison to Byfield was perfect by you, I think. If you believe he's a better prospect than Byfield and can become that guy at the pro level faster, I totally get how you could put him that high. And the thing with Demidov is, as an organization, if you're Columbus, you can wait. Now, you do need to have a good understanding of, is this kid actually realistic to come over at all?
Does he want to play for your organization?
Right. You need information there that I just don't have.
Yeah.
But in a world where I'm assuming things work out relatively well, he wants to play in the NHL, etc. For me, it's the hockey IQ that pushes him over the top.
I think with Demidov, of the other Russian players, I have less concern around him because part of why he spent so much of this last year in the MHL is because he has intentions to break his contract and come to North America. And so I think the intent to come to North America has been demonstrated early enough that I think there's a willingness. I will say, though, the concern of specifically coming to my organization, the Columbus Blue Jackets, would be a fair question. The size factor, I think playing in a league among men demonstrated that at 5'11", he is still a pretty strong player. And I do feel like the NHL upside, it's like in his path, I think it's quicker to plug and play. I will say the benefit of Lindstrom is the possibility of him actually being a center in the NHL.
For sure.
Whereas
it matters a lot.
It does, right? Like it's still a gamble because you don't know if that is going to translate from juniors into the pro level, if they even remain a center. But that is a desperate need for the organization.
And you're not even
as well.
having that conversation with Demidov. He's a winger.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say. So that is where I would give Lindstrom the edge, is the center depth that I also think the organization needs. I think, honestly, the forward depth on the whole, though, needs help. So that's why I think there's absolutely benefit to having a, in my opinion, sooner to NHL ready winger, but it's very close.
Okay.
Building blocks are centers, right?
Yeah.
To win a Stanley Cup championship team. So it does make a difference between a center and a winger. It does.
It does.
And I know I said you don't draft by position. It's not what I said, but that sometimes makes you a better player because you're a center. It just does. It makes you a better asset, a better player than somebody that can only be a wing.
The way I would put it to people who are kind of newer to it is, it's way easier for a center to become a winger than a winger to become
There
a
you
center.
go. Well said.
So
Do you want to pay bills?
I did.
Okay. Apparently, I'm just asleep.
Number 3 on the list.
So who do we
So-
decide on it to?
Yeah. Well,
I thought we agreed
I
we're
thi-
just going with Lindstrom for
No,
the
I mean-
sake
Because we
of
like
it.
the center depth.
Okay.
You're the head amateur
all
guy.
right, so Lindstrom at 2.
So we would have gone from our list originally, scratch Demidov, and then put Lindstrom.
Yep. Does that make Demidov 3 then?
Well,
Mr. Head Scout?
I
I don't have him at 3, but I have him at 4.
Okay.
So
well, we have him pretty high right there.
Yeah.
So maybe that's where you would get overruled there. You know what
yeah,
I mean?
and I at 3, Demidov at 3. I'm not gonna fight that.
All right, let's put
I'm
him
very
there.
comfortable with that. You guys all have him right there as well. Yeah. So
What's that? Demi, yeah.
Demi.
Well, yeah, Demi.
All right, so 4 on our list, but number 3 on most of our lists, I think it ends up being.
yeah. So I've got Zayne Parekh next.
Sure.
So this is just me valuing an absolute lights out offensive defenseman that I think can change games from the back end. He scores goals. He controls the play every time he has the puck. He does everything for you offensively. And you look around the league right now and look at the guys that are kind of running show as young defensemen in the NHL. It's Cale Makar, it's Quinn Hughes, it's Adam Fox, it's Miro Heiskanen, it's Evan Bouchard, and all of those guys in their draft year. Okay, but what kind of defender are they? And it starts, Noah Dobson, it starts with their offensive upside, what they can do with the puck. Scoring goals is hard to do. You want guys that can drive that bus, and I think he does it better than anybody else on my list.
Where's Park from? Where's he play?
Now you're putting me on the spot.
I mean, nobody's.
Thank you.
Saginaw.
Okay, so that's where you're located. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
he's
you
the-
have a
of course he
bias.
plays for Saginaw.
AJ, you live in Ontario. That's why you're biased.
Me and AJ are fighting now.
You're biased. Or you're biased. That's why you
Sure.
want your guy from the OHL. And then you hear that all the time in those freaking arguments.
Park isn't even a top 3 defenseman in this class. Get out.
Well, I don't have top 10 either.
Jesus
So there you go.
Christ.
So I have a seat there,
He's
head
like
amateur
my,
guy.
He's like my 6'7". My numbers are a little off because I put Demidov at 1.
Mine's past 10, so.
He's all. I could.
And it's because I value Zeev more. I have to just come out and say it.
I have 4 defensemen in my top 10. He's not one of them. I think you could argue he
I have Zeev next.
could be my 4th.
That's cool. That's cool.
And I'll tell you who I'd add next, and then we'll figure out who we're going to put at 4
So
on
yeah,
our
who's
list.
your next?
I had
one?
Levshunov.
I hate to admit that I did too. I'm not sure I'm happy about it, to be honest with you.
So I've had this conversation off air with a couple of you. If you're taking the shot, if you're doing what AJ's doing with Parekh, I go with Zeev instead of Parekh. I can't say his last name. Parekh, is that how it's pronounced? I don't know. It's got a K in the middle. I struggle. I think Zeev is the guy that has the highest ceiling. I just don't know that he is going to get all the way there. But I think he has the potential to have a serious offensive impact as a defenseman, as well as being I'll just call him a top 4 guy. I think he can fully play all 200 feet of the ice. And I think he has the potential, put in the right position and given the development time, to get up to, I don't know if I'd say truly elite offense, but a guy who can give you 40 plus 50 points a year. I just don't know that he gets there. And that's why I put Levshunov ahead of him. I know safe is death and all, but Levshunov to me is a guaranteed NHLer for any team in the league. And where he ends up, if you're picking him this early, you're hoping for a top 4 guy, but you're going to get an NHL defenseman out of him. Whereas Zeev, I think there's a little more variability.
I don't have Levshunov in my top 10.
So here's where I'm mixed on him. On one hand, I see the value of having a right shot defender just in general, whether it's
Sure.
a stylistic fit in Columbus when he's ready to be a part of the pro game or not. That is a valuable asset that could yield a good return that does fit the team's need in the moment. I just feel like that's the kind of piece that teams are always in need of. And that's not to plan around him being a trade piece. That's not a good idea. With Zeev, and why I have him kind of confusingly in here, one, I have a bias, so I'm going to fully own up to that.
She's definitely our Rocky Mountain scout for
Yeah,
sure.
the Rocky Mountain. And with Zeev, though, it's the well-rounded both ends of the ice component. And it's also how he thrived under pressure in this last season. The trajectory that he was on, I think he described it pressure as a privilege. To see him in a best-on-best competition against his peers and without power play time excel and make an impact in the World Juniors tournament the way that he did, impressed me. I feel like that translates to the pro level really well. Defensively, the strides that he made, I think there's this offensive ability that he teases that I think can only improve from here. But I just think there is something about him that could turn out to be a very well-rounded defender that... Now I'm making it complicated, though. Like, now we have 3 different names.
But this is
Well,
what
that's
happens.
okay. That's
yeah.
what happens.
The thing that we have in common, though, is that we all like Zeev.
Yep.
I got
We
Zeev
do.
at 5.
You're right. We like him somewhere. All right.
I have him at 5 as well.
Okay, so
I
I got him
also
at
have
5.
him at
Who I
5.
got at 4, and I'm going to piss Rudo off.
It's
I got the big...
Silly
So,
ass
yeah.
pussy.
Yeah. All right.
Because
so we can move on.
No, I'm just telling you. No, the reason I did this is because it's in those conversations on those those boardrooms.
Yeah.
And someone's taking him top 5. I am telling you. I am telling you.
I'm the scout
I'm
at the
not saying
table.
I would. I'm saying something. That's why
I'm
I
the
have
scout
him
at the
there.
table saying
care.
you're making a mistake.
Yeah,
I don't care who's making that mistake. It's not going to be me.
Exactly.
But the arguments that are unbelievable for sure. Because it's so like a lot of people are saying they're taking him top 5, and then other people are like, not a chance.
I don't
like
have him
you're
in my
saying.
top 15.
That's my point. So you're talking about, to explain our chat, like those war rooms are exactly what this is right now. Because someone in there, and I was just being the villain. I'm not necessarily liking him. I'm not. I wouldn't take him there, but I'm saying that's what's happening. You know what I mean? That's what's happening. That's a typical name right there that will get tossed around. That he's the wild card of the first round there. because they usually have them all done. Like all the guys know, they're like, and then there's always one guy. Like one year was Zibanejad, or like as a wild card. You know what I mean? And then you're like, and then we're gonna get, this guy at 24.
Yeah.
But there's a wild card. I think he's a wild card of the early names because he's so polarizing.
Yep.
Like
It doesn't sound like he's too particularly well liked amongst us.
No.
that's my point. So let's not
Did
put
you
him
have
there.
him?
No, but I did have Levshunov as like my 3, so I have to be fair.
So I have him down lower, so I would lose my
So
pick.
It sounds like the
next
guy
one
we
is
all
Zeev.
have is Zeev. Yeah.
So you want 4
We're
Zeev?
comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I do have Levshunov in my list at technically 3. I just went back on it on air.
We can.
that happens. That happens in the meetings too. As a guy has, my list is wrong. I think it should be this way.
All right.
So like our 4 would be what? Zeev?
Zeev.
Zeev, yeah.
I'm really happy.
How do you
with
spell
that.
his first name? Like,
EEV.
2 E's, yeah.
all right.
So
And
we've
then-
got Zeev.
And then who would
at
be
5?
5?
I
where
would
do you
have Levshunov here.
Where do you feel about Levshunov? Because these two
He's
are
at
wrong.
7.
Jeez.
And you don't even have him.
I think he's
No.
I think he's
You
got
don't even have
polish.
Levshunov, yeah?
No.
I think he's a surefire NHL.
Yeah, no, I think there's polish. It's serviceable.
We're running out of time. Very
Yeah, I know.
rapidly.
Yeah, it's gonna.
No, but we'll have fun next week with that too. Again.
Yeah,
We
But we're
could.
just trying to show.
You know what?
Let's just do 5, and we'll do the rest next week.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Because who's your next guy?
Uh,
We still haven't. You're right. We did.
Well, again,
neglected.
again,
Parekh's
hold
not
on.
making the list.
Hold on, you're our head amateur guy, and you had Park in there. We don't.
Yeah,
even
I
have
had
him.
Park at 3.
I have him like 7.
I have him outside the top 10.
Me too, but then again, that's an
Jesus.
argument's sake right there. So let's say it would be Park because why? That's your guy. That's the guy. You're the head guy, and you're pounding your fist on the table.
Well, for one, Parekh is absolutely electric offensively. He's not as good defensively as Levshunov, but Levshunov's also the most inconsistent player in the top 10. His bad games are horrific. The guy's horrific. When he has a bad night, it's hard to watch. And I'm not burning a top pick on a guy that I think is sleepy too often. I don't his size, the tools, and it's all there, but he doesn't make a consistent enough impact. I've got other defenders in front of him.
I can understand how you end up with other defenders in front of him. A guy having bad nights just doesn't bother me. How many dudes in the NHL do we watch, like Josh Manson, who some nights it's just a disaster? Like,
Yeah, and that's fine. But when you're supposedly a top player in college hockey, it can't be as nearly as many as it was. And I don't think his good nights are even as good as what Parekh has. So, and that guy is the best offensive defenseman. For my money, he's the best offensive defenseman since Cale Makar. So
I wonder about that goal scoring ability transferring to pro, man. I really do.
I don't. It looks just like Cale Makar. It's the same thing. Wrist shots that get through traffic it's very accurate. And his playmaking is solid, but his goal scoring is absolutely a huge weapon. for
Okay,
him.
but you're talking like back then when you were going to take Kulikov back then, his draft year, and you said he was going to be an offensive defenseman. And then all of a sudden, he never became an offensive defenseman. So you're full of shit on your assessment of Park. And that's how those things happen.
Okay.
No, but it's funny because it gets so nasty. Like, it can get nasty. You got to make sure you keep it professional. But feelings get hurt. They do. You know what I mean? Because they bring back stuff from years back, and you're like,
So
yeah.
we need a fifth guy.
Yeah. Well,
You're the
I
head
got
scout,
Park
buddy.
written on it already, but I got Park written on it because I gave it to you because you said, you know what, I'm freaking putting my fist down and I'm telling you this is our guy. I'll risk my job. You know what I mean? Like, it's all good. You know, like,
Yeah.
we're just giving examples here, right? You know.
No,
And I know
these-
we got to wrap this up, and next week, but then all of a sudden you'll have names, right? These are all names right here that I'm doing. If Tiff can put that up, like, you know, like names. Then all of a sudden at 24, let's say there was 30 names here, you know, and then the Avs are going to go to 24, and then they have, you know, this guy's gone, 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 gone. Whoop!
Cool.
There's a block there. Gone,
Dickinson will be there. It'll be
I am
great.
telling you, 99% out of 99, out of 100, you go right there with that empty boxes because that's the guy that you had made your list as a group for a full year and best player available right there. And we felt that you'll hear Chris say, we felt he was a top 10 pick, you know what I mean? And then he slipped. I don't know, Cole Eiserman. And I'm, probably a guy that might slip, right? You know what I mean? Like,
is it weird? Some people have him pretty high, including myself, but other people have him down like 13 to 15.
That's my point.
I have him at 8.
I have him at
Yeah, I
11.
got him
I
top
have
10
him at
because
5.
for me, my argument would be like, I can't leave that many goals on the table. I just can't get myself to leave that many goals.
Yep.
Like him or not. The toughest thing to do in the National Hockey League is to put the black thing in that mesh net.
For sure.
This guy does it.
There you go.
I guess we'll have to save the
We'll have our 6 through 10.
the rest of it for another
next week
day.
we can have some fun with that, but
Now
that's how it works. you know what I mean?
imagine doing that for 8 hours a day in the scout meetings.
Buddy, it is grueling, it is tough, and you better be ready, and because it's important, it's the blood to your to your franchise. It is.
All right. We're going to wrap up that show. Hope y'all enjoyed learning a little bit behind the scenes of how it actually shapes up when you're making a draft list for a team and their whole process behind the draft. So we appreciate y'all hanging out. We're back tomorrow. I think we have a top 5 of some kind coming tomorrow. We'll see what else we do.
we just did it.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
We appreciate y'all, though, and we will talk to you on the next one.
We all silly like the mayor.